How often has any one of us thought that life is becoming too difficult or overwhelming? How frequently do we think that I've had enough of all of this and I wish I was never born? If you were to actually count the number of times an average human being actually does that, you would be surprised by the number. In quite the same way, Friedrich Nietzsche, commonly referred to as Nietzsche, also pondered over the struggles and hardships of life. However, unlike me and you, he devised a system to actually deal with it. Nietzsche, a German philosopher and philologist, was born in Lützen, Germany, in the year 1844. He had to deal with quite a number of challenges throughout his life, most important of which were health-related, that shaped his views regarding suffering and hardships. He openly accepted and acknowledged the fact that this world is indeed not a happy place. It's a place where you have to go through quite a number of sad and terrifying experiences, whether it's the death or loss of a loved one, the unfulfillment of one's greatest dreams, excruciating physical pain, or a lifetime of psychological troubles and challenges. The world is certainly not a bed of roses, or as the Germans put it, a pony farm. However, and this is where Nietzsche begins treading a different path, we as humans do not necessarily have to be affected by it in the way that is commonly understood. Instead of obsessing over the miseries of life, feeling like helpless victims, we ought to see these very hardships as a challenge to what you ask, a challenge to overcome and conquer, a challenge that should be used as a stepping stone to achieve our greatest potentials. Nietzsche had in one of his more prominent works, namely Ecce Homo, introduced the concept of amor fati. Basically, Latin, it translates in the words love for fate, a love for whatever happens to us, no matter how perceivably terrible or terrifying. The concept of amor fati aims to inculcate in people the belief that we should never fall victim to despair whenever something untoward happens in life. The reason being that only through hardships and suffering can a person be able to achieve his true potential. If a human being is not challenged, in whatever shape or form it may be, he will become complacent and ease-loving. He will never step out of his way to achieve anything that is worth achieving, and shall always chase comfort wherever he may be able to find it. Here comes two more, opposite but interrelated concepts, proposed by Nietzsche, particularly those of the Übermensch, or overman, and the last man. The Übermensch is such a person that does not conform to the values and moral dictates of time, but instead performs a revaluation of all the standards society has to offer. He sets his own values, in particular those that help him to affirm life and aid him in embracing both the joys and miseries of life. The Übermensch does not deny life, but quite the contrary in fact. He sees life for what it actually is, and then uses this realization to help him adopt such a stance that leads him to overcome all existing trials and challenges. For him, reliance on societal values is not the way to live one's life, but instead being a highly individualistic and self-reliant human being, upholding his own ideas of what should and should not be, and thus living accordingly. This concept is discussed by Nietzsche in his famous work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where emphasis is laid on life affirmation and nihilism is rejected. Nietzsche was of the opinion that traditional systems of moral values led people to adopt a life-denying mindset, and personally was not in favor of Christian values and principles. He believed that these made people develop a more negative attitude towards life. Now, moving back to the previously mentioned concept of the last man, he was the complete opposite of the Übermensch or overman. He is a person who holds no particular individuality of his own. He is just part of the herd, part of all that goes on around him. He does not strive for anything, and neither does he ever want to strive. What he prefers is comfort and mediocrity. Excelling in something has never ever crossed his mind, and he tries to avoid any risk he ever has to face. He never dreams of achieving his full potential, and the most terrifying thing in the world for him is a challenge. Nietzsche describes that it is precisely this mentality and approach towards life that stifles inner growth, whether that be the cultural and artistic growth of a society as a whole, or even of a more individual nature. The last man prescribes to no personal ideas or values and goes wherever society tends to take him. Another concept that holds prominence in Nietzsche's works is the concept of the will to power. For him, it was the basic drive or will behind every person's actions. It can be regarded as the need to exert one's power. Power, not in the traditional sense of asserting dominance on people around you, but on a more personal level, where a human being strives to overcome all existing challenges so that he may achieve his greatest potential. For Nietzsche, this will was the primary driving force for man. Even so, more than the will to survive or reproduce, this concept can be linked to that of the Übermensch, as this too emphasizes on the promotion of self-reliance and individuality. Man is in a constant need to prove himself to his own self. He alone realizes the obstacles he faces in life, and only through challenging our hindrances can he attain of satisfaction and self-fulfillment. The will to power is a greatly debated topic among scholars, where some believe that this explains the existence of everything, while others, on the other hand, look at it from a more psychological perspective regarding human behavior. Summing up the analysis of Nietzsche's work, he had a somewhat unique take on life. Differing from thinkers and philosophers on a wide range of issues, he sought to propose a way forward for the common man. Although it has been more than a century since Nietzsche has left this world, his work still appeals to a great variety of people even today. The primary reason being that all that he proposed could be applied to every person, regardless of his age, social class, or background. As mentioned earlier in this video, every person has his own set of challenges. These can be short-term, day-to-day obstacles, or even long-term life goals he hopes to achieve someday. In order for a person to overcome and achieve these, he ought to become more resilient and resolute. He should never feel pity for himself, no matter how hard things could seem to get. For every person, it's his own path, and he alone has to tread it. Nobody else can do it for him. Only by accepting the world for what it truly is can a person finally manage to eventually change things for the better. The world is a place of suffering and misery, but that does not necessarily mean that man is not equipped to deal with this. Every person has an inbuilt capacity to gather all that is within him to keep moving forward, because quite honestly, he doesn't have any other choice. If he finds himself on the battlefield of life, the only sane thing that could possibly be done is to fight. This fight within him would eventually turn that person into someone who would never shy away from any opportunity to grow and become a better person than he could ever have thought he could. Indeed, Nietzsche was a controversial figure, and many people would not agree with him on many things. But as far as the will to go on is concerned, only a few other people could be considered in parallel to the kind of ambition he managed to provide to humanity at large. So to live is to suffer, but as he aptly put it, what does not kill me only makes me stronger.